This video is brought to you by my latest book, How to Play Melodic Rock Lead Guitar, a comprehensive guide to doing exactly that, playing melodic rock lead guitar. This is not just some collection of scale patterns and tabs, although you do get plenty of those, but you also get an entire chapter on how to come up with your own licks, as well as video content, tutorials and demonstrations, loads of jam tracks, and all the way through I'm encouraging you to expand your fretboard knowledge and showing you how you can think in a more musical and melodic way. Check out the link in the description for more details. Hello chaps, welcome once again to John Robson Guitar Tuition. As always, I do hope you're well. Now then, I was born in 1967, and as my dad always used to like to point out, if it hadn't been for England winning the World Cup in 1966 and the subsequent celebrations, there's a fair chance I might not have arrived on the scene. But anyway, 67 was the year I made my earthly debut, and I made my stage debut 14 years later. Well, sort of. First gig, sort of. It was at a school assembly, and then, I went on to other things, playing on the local circuit and various other, on-stage activities. And I'm just thinking in the kind of late 80s and all throughout the 90s, basically, when I was at my gigging prime, 3 or 4 nights a week, most weeks, I was out there treading the boards, standing on my hind legs in front of an audience, playing in covers bands. You used to read guitar magazines where you'd read about Steve Lukather or Mike Landau or insert name of famous session guitarist, who would turn up at a gig with a big long wheelbase van full of different amps. There'd be deluxe reverbs, there'd be Marshall plexis, there'd be, maybe some kind of boogie in there, maybe, a Dumble and AC30s, and, the list goes on. Every conceivable amp tone that was necessary. Us mere mortals used to kind of read these interviews and articles in Guitarist, Guitar Player, Guitar World, whichever of the magazine was your one of choice. And, there was an element of jealousy. And then towards, I guess, the end of the 90s, we started getting amp modelers. I remember the first ever amp modelling amp, I believe it was at the Line 6 Axis or something like that, which could, at the flick of a switch, deliver an AC30 tone or a Marshall plexi tone or a Fender twin reverb or whatever. And, we were all, just kind of going out and doing our, weekend gigs with PV Bandit, that sort of period. I guess the late 80s through into the 90s. If you went to see 10 bands on 10 different nights at 10 different venues, there's a fair chance you'd see more than half a dozen PV Bandits on stage, because they sound okay, they get the job done, and it's PV, so it'll pretty much work underwater if you need it to. A few boss pedals down at the player's feet, and that was all you needed. Fast forward to today, and, we're spoilt for choice, aren't we? We can now do that thing that Lukather and Landau and all the rest of them used to do, and turn up with, not necessarily a van load full of amps, but a virtual van load. I mean, just this little unit alone, the Fender Tone Master Pro, 100 different amps in that. And probably the same can be said for the Quad Cortex, although that does captures, doesn't it? So it's an infinite number that you can have there. Line 6 Helix, I don't know the specs of that, but it's basically in the same sort of ballpark as is something like the Fractal FM9 or the granddaddy of them all, the Kemper Profiler. All of these things offer you a ridiculous amount of what I can only consider to be option anxiety when it comes to, your choice of amp tone. As I say, back when I was playing in a country band or a top 40 kind of functions band, where it wasn't even just top 40, you were doing everything from, Def Leppard through to Motown. and all points in between. And, you know, a blues band, a kind of a bit of a shoegaze indie band that I was in for a while. I played briefly in like a rockabilly trio, where it was like properly sort of that sort of thing where, you know, with a big sort of bass fiddle, kind of stand-up double bass and everything. That was fun to amplify, let me tell you. But, you know, throughout all of this, I only ever had one amp at a time. I've owned a lot of amps in my time. My first gigging amp, the one that I did the school assembly with, was I can't find a picture of it anywhere, but it was a Laney Mighty 50, single channel, solid state amp with bass, middle, treble. Did it have a middle control? I can't remember. It had tone controls and volume and gain as well. And into that, at the time, I was plugging the satellite Les Paul copy back there. The finest plywood the 1970s had to offer. And, you know, I later went on to owning other Laney amps, a couple of Linebacker amps, Marshall Valve State, Hughes and Kettner, Marshall JCM 900. I've played and owned through I don't know how many PV Bandits. Like a Fender amp, a solid state twin thing called a Pro 185, if anyone remembers those. That was a beast of an amp, was really loud. What else have I owned? Well, countless amps, okay? You know, but only ever one at a time. And I could always get, throughout all of those different bands I was playing in, I could always get the right number of tones. As I say, just with a couple of Boss, or I think I had a few Dan Electro pedals at one point, just all of the obvious ones, a bit of a compressor usually, just that was a clean boost for like when I want to do me clean knoflery solos, a delay and a chorus. And the amp probably had reverb on it anyway, which when I was gigging, I used to turn that off because, you know, why add reverb, like room sound, when you're in a big room? You know, it's already there. It's built into the venue, brings that along with it. It provides it. So I always used to kind of prefer to turn the reverb off when I was playing live. And just with those few pedals and an amp, maybe a channel switching amp, although quite often I'd just live on a single channel of an amp after a while when I discovered the old volume control trick. I could get pretty much any tone I wanted. Here's some examples. At the moment, you know what amp I use. I use the Blue Guitar Amp 1 Mercury Edition. So here's that amp giving me a little bit of 80s kind of jangly clean tone. And then how about a little bit of classic rock crunchy riffing? Or maybe you want to kind of open the taps a little bit and have a little bit of ballsy lead. Maybe your next gig is playing with a rockabilly band like that guy with a big double bass that was, as I say, fun to amplify. What about that tone? Then there's always the Sunday afternoon jam session at the local jazz club. And then back to my first love, a nice little bit of blues. And all of those examples were using exactly the same settings on the amp. The Blue Guitar amp on Mercury Edition on the Vintage channel. For the 80s thing, I turned up the delay, added a bit of reverb, and put a virtual chorus pedal on. For the crunchy riffing, turn the chorus off, turn the delay down. For the ballsy lead, pretty much the same thing, just kind of cranking the guitar's volume up further, because the variations in gain are all coming via my little finger on the guitar's volume control. For the rockabilly thing, again, just pretty much the same core sound as I used for the jangly 80s clean sound, but with just a little bit of just changing the delay a little bit from a kind of multi-tap to like a slapback kind of thing. For the jazz, again, pretty much the same sound, but just neck humbucker. Roll the guitar's tone off a little bit, and you know, I've got that a little bit of reverb and stuff in the mix. But as I say, if I was playing that live, I wouldn't bother, because the room has a natural reverb to it. And then just exactly the same setting for the bluesy stuff, just with the guitar's volume wound up a little bit. And I think those examples, well, they do to me anyway, show that it's not really worth, for me, it's not worth my time, that's all I'm going to say. Going down the rabbit hole of thinking you've got to have this amp for this sound and that amp for that sound, and oh yeah, I've got to have an AC30 because we're doing a Queen number, I've got to have a deluxe reverb because we're doing a Dire Straits number, I've got to have a Marshall Plexi because we're doing an AC/DC number. Is your drummer swapping out the snare with every song? Something tells me that's probably not happening, you know. And nobody in the audience cares a flying fig what amp tone you've got, as long as it sounds appropriate and like close to the recording that they recognise and that they're wanting to dance to. That's it. That's all that matters. You know, and the moral of the story, I think, is that, and again, I'm going to start sounding like Old Man Yells at Cloud here, or possibly one of the four Yorkshiremen from the Monty Python sketch. The moral of the story is that I think people need to learn to use what they've got to the best effect before they start thinking about, well, I need something else. Okay? If I can get kind of an 80s kind of highly polished, produced, clean, chorusy, jangly tone, and a crunchy riffing tone, and a ballsy lead tone, and a rockabilly tone, and a jazz tone, and a nice blues tone, out of the same amp, on the same settings, just by tweaking the volume control on the guitar and messing around with like turning a delay or a bit of chorus on and off, then it does really sort of flummox me why people have this this need to go down a rabbit hole of trying out different amp models and stuff. I've tried out these myself. I had a lot of fun a few weeks back with the what's it called, the NAM captures. There's my phone pinging. I'll have a look at that in a second. But you know, I soon got bored with it because I was spending more time trying out sounds than I was actually playing with them. And that for me is a frustrating state to be in. I don't know. Is it just me? Am I missing out on something? Let me know in the comments, and I'm sure you have views on this. Do you have one of these all singing, all dancing units and you couldn't live without it? If so, let me know why. What am I missing out on? You know, as I say, I grew up as part of a generation where we had to make the best of what we had and make the most of what we had. So it goes back to like when I was a student, I think, you know. You'd buy a big old tin of corned beef and you'd have corned beef and chips one night, and then you'd make meatballs with it the next night. Then you could kind of, you know, make some sort of pasta sauce with it, that and a can of tomatoes the next night. So you're making lots and lots of different things out of the same ingredients, and I prefer the simplicity of that, but you may not. Let me know in the comments, and I'd be interested in your thoughts. But that's the video for today, folks. Hope you found it interesting and entertaining, and maybe just watching me ramble away in a particularly dinosaur-like manner. And if that's the case, please hit the subscribe button and the notification bell if you haven't already done so, and why not drop me a like as well while you're at it. Don't forget the live stream every Friday, 5 PM UK time. Beer and chat on a Friday. It's a great way to kick off the weekend. I'd love to see you there if you can make it. But for now, I'll bid you all a good day and say thank you so much for watching. Thank you for your time. Look after yourselves, folks. Stay well, stay safe, and above all, stay sane. Bye for now.